Hi, I'm Ardith. Thanks for dropping by today. I'm still working on my birthday card bank for 2021, and Pretty Pink Posh just released a bunch of new birthday goodies. One of the new products is this birthday cake coverplate die. Coverplate dies are not cheap, and when you decide to buy one, you want to be sure that you'll be able to get full value from your purchase. So today, I'm going to use just this one cover plate to create a whole family of cards by using different colors, techniques, and styles to change them up and personalize them. Let's get started. I'm featuring 5 techniques and 6 cards, and that includes 2 2-for-1 techniques. I'm working up from the fastest and simplest to the most complex design, so be sure to stick around to see where I end up. Here's the quickest. I've got a panel of white cardstock and I cut the cover plate from gray cardstock. I guess actually these two together would be the quickest and easiest card, but I wanted to add a little fun, so I got out a few of my Distress Oxide sprays. I started by spritzing peacock feathers all over the panels and then twisted Citron near the bottom and wilted violet near the top. Using colors next to each other on the color wheel means that they'll work together well and create new shades where they overlap. And you know when I'm spritzing there's going to be clear shimmer spray, so I did that too. This is a quick, fun way to see how the sprays work on both light and dark cardstock. I finished the white panel by trimming it and gluing it down to a white card base. I added a few jewels for some sparkle. I could have glued the gray panel down for another quick card, but I decided to save it for my final card, so you'll see it again later on. The next technique is a variation of the first. This time I blended red ink through my die cut, and this will give me another set of 2 cards. A couple of things to note here. Although I stuck my homemade paper stencil down with temporary adhesive, I still wanted to be quite careful with how heavy my blending hand was, so that nothing would move and I would end up with a nice crisp outline on the white panel. This meant sacrificing a bit of the quality of my ink blending. You can see that it's not exactly smooth. The simplest way to get smoother ink blending is to keep adding more ink, and I did that for a little while. And these inks do smooth out as they dry, so that's something else to remember. But by this point, I really wanted to leave it quite choppy, so you can see another way to smooth out rough blending. And that's that clear shimmer spray. It adds enough moisture and shimmer that the ink blending smooths right out, and it gives it almost a velvety shimmery finish. For the red panel, I trimmed it down and I put it on a white card base. One of the things I love about this cover plate is that it's so obviously a birthday cake with candles and balloons. You don't have to add a sentiment, and that's another thing that helps to keep these cards quick and simple. For the red outline, I put it onto a craft card base after layering it over a slightly offset white outline to add a little brightness and dimension. For the next card, I thought of a way to use the A2 cover plate on a 4¼ inch square card, which is my favorite card format. I started with a white panel that I cut down to a square and the extra bit. For the extra bit, I went direct to paper with some aqua ink, and I'll set that aside to dry for later. Then I pressed some more ink onto my work surface. I spritzed it with water and picked it up with my square panel of white cardstock. I dried it, then picked up some more ink to create a layered speckled effect. And here's my shimmer spray again. To quote a certain advertisement, I put that stuff on everything. For my die cut outline, I chose some silver foil cardstock. I didn't worry that my piece is narrower than the die because I'm going to be trimming off everything but the cake. I used my sharp snippy scissors and I went all around the cake, cutting off the frame and the balloons. When I came to corners, I tried to create slightly rounded corners to match the ones that are already on the outline. Initially, I left the cake plate on so I could see how it will fit onto my card. Because the stand under the plate is open, I trimmed all that off and just left the rounded line. Then I tried it on my card again, and I felt like the plate gave my cake too much of a rocking chair feel, so I ended up trimming straight down the left and right sides before I was finally happy with the shape of the cake. I used liquid glue on the back of the cake and I attached it to the card front. And then I grabbed the die-cut icing pieces and inlaid them back into the outline for some added interest. And what about that extra piece? I grabbed the little extra die from the Valentine Vines cover plate that's also in this release, and I used it to cut a bunch of little aqua hearts that I glued onto the icing. This card has a more elegant feel, and if you trimmed off the candles, it would make a beautiful wedding card, especially with the addition of the hearts. And now that we've had a little taste of inlaying, I thought that the next technique would be a full inlaid card. This die has nice big pieces and not too many of them, so it'll be pretty easy. I started by cutting the die with white cardstock, and I put a pad of newsprint underneath to help me keep track of all the pieces. I used liquid glue to adhere the outline to a white card base, and this is yet another option for an elegant card design, just plain white on white. On the newsprint, I organized all the background pieces, that is, the pieces that are not cake or balloons. I tried to put them approximately where they'll be on the card, but I didn't worry too much about precision. I used a bit of temporary adhesive on the back of each piece so that they won't move around in my next step. Then I grabbed this new Confetti layered stencil set, and I blended ink through each layer. I started with a periwinkle ink, and then I moved to a golden yellow in the second stencil. I didn't worry too much about placement. The confetti is randomly placed, so I didn't need to worry that each stencil was lining up with the previous layer, which some stencils do require. You could turn or flip the stencils too to add even more layers of confetti for a different look. Finally, I used some bright magenta ink for the final layer, and this creates a really fun pattern for my background, perfect for a birthday party. I glued each piece into place on my card, and then I added the cake stand. I used the piece that was cut from the silver foil cardstock from my previous card, and that adds a nice shiny touch. I used the same 3 ink colors on the balloons, blending heavier on the edges and lighter in the centers, to give a look of some dimension and shine. For my chocolate cake, I started by blending a lighter brown ink onto each layer of the cake, again creating dimension by going darker on the edges and lighter in the center. Then I used the new Lattice stencil and another layer of ink blending with a darker brown ink to create a tone-on-tone pattern on the side of the cake. This is an easy way to add texture and visual interest. And then the trickiest part was those tiny little candles. I blended pink ink onto them and I put them into place. For the flames, I just grabbed a yellow marker and I colored the outlines as well as the insides so that it's very clear that these candles are lit. There's a lot going on in this card, but with the bright colors and all those textures, I think it's really fun and happy. It'd be so easy to personalize it with someone's favorite colors too. Finally, the card that was the most complex and time-consuming, but still fun and perfect for a special birthday, a shaker card. I started by gluing 5 of the die cuts together. They were all cut from white cardstock, and 5 of them together will be high enough to create nice little wells for some shaker materials. I got out my citrus mixed jewels and 3 colors of seed beads to put into the cake and the balloons. The cake layers are bigger and they have enough space to deal with the various sizes of the citrus jewels, and they'll give lots of sparkle. I used a little plastic spoon to help me dump the jewels into the right areas on my card. As I worked, I ran into the arch enemy of anyone working with jewels, sequins, and seed beads, which is static electricity. Especially in the winter when our hands are drier, these tiny things seem to have a mind of their own and they jump all over the place. After struggling a little while, I remembered that I had a dryer sheet nearby, and I got that out and I rubbed my fingers on it. I have no idea if it helped or if I just thought it helped, but it seemed like things got a little easier for a while. When it came to filling the balloons, the wells were quite a bit smaller, so I tried to guess how much of my spoon needed to be filled with the seed beads before I put them in. When I got to the yellow one, I overfilled it, and to fix that, I just grabbed some Post-it tape, pressed it over top of them, and lifted a few out without spilling the rest all over the place. I felt pretty much like a genius at that point. I continued on with the final balloon and the green seed beads. And before I moved on, I flipped over the biggest jewels so that their pretty side was facing up. They won't have room to turn over in the shaker, even though the smaller ones will. Then it was time to close everything up. Remember way back to the gray outline in my first technique? That's going to be the top of my shaker card, and I put liquid glue on the back before covering it with a piece of acetate. I put more glue on the acetate just on the outline areas, and then I pressed it down on my card. I should have brushed over the acetate with my dryer sheet first, because a few of those jewels and beads jumped up to meet the acetate, so it took me a minute to get everyone back in place and to seal it all up. Now I'm thinking that this cover plate definitely ticks the value box. If you've only got 5 minutes, or if you want to take some time and make something really special, there's a way to use it to create a personalized card for just about anyone. Do you have a favorite card? Did I miss a technique? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.